Hi, this is Dr. Randy Hurst, a psychologist doing these videos, basic education videos. This one on problems that develop in what I'm calling enabling the problems to continue developing, getting worse through unintentional training. And then the kind of subtitle is Me versus Me. So the issue for this is, have you developed any kind of problem that is just getting worse for you in your life or affecting relationships with people around you? Home, work, family, social, whatever. Legal, medical, the whole thing. These could be addictions would be one type of problem. Behavioral addictions, chemical addictions. Anxiety, fear, stress, worry, those kinds of fear or threat-based types of problems. Or trying to change someone else, or some combination of any of those types of things that have gotten to where they're out of control, or just there's too much wreckage in your life and you're wanting to do something about it. So if you've developed any of these kinds of things, ask yourself, did I intend to do this to myself? Did I intend for this to happen? And usually the answer to that's going to be no. Every once in a while when I was working with people, I'd have somebody say, oh yeah, no, I planned on being an alcoholic. I knew I was getting out of control, or, it just wasn't common. The way it was common, that was kind of interesting, is somebody who said, oh yeah, I knew I was crazy with, drugs or drinking or whatever it was, going for the gusto, thrill seeking. I knew I wouldn't live till, I probably wouldn't live till I was 21. And where this would come up, where this was ironic, let's call it, is when somebody passed that 21 or 30 or whatever that date was that they had in their head that they would never live to. And it was like, oh crap, what do I do now? And especially if they had really ended up with enough wreckage but had lived through it, or if they ended up in a relationship or had a family. Those would be places where sometimes people would really go, oh, I need to do something differently. I need to get help. So if any of these issues have gotten to you, caused problems, the question to ask is, well, where did it go wrong? And if you've seen other videos, there's going to be some overlap here. Where it goes wrong is kind of, I fit it into what I refer to as monster emotions. And I'm using emotions in kind of an odd way. Antonio Damasio was a noted researcher and author who makes a distinction that I struggled with in the beginning. And he kind of refers to emotions are those gut feelings that move us, or emotions that move us. And he distinguishes them from feelings. And these gut emotions, they're reactive, they're fast, they're almost automatic. They're in the body to protect from threat, so they're the fight or flight, the fast reacting, self-protecting types of things that have to do with threat. Or the gut feelings that are about reward, about want. I want that feeling. I want that. I want to buy that thing. And I can't afford it, but forget it. I want it. When we go for wants or fears to the point that it starts causing problems in our life, it can get out of control. And then if you add to that if it involves tobacco, caffeine, alcohol, drugs, there's a chemical component. It's not just a behavioral, if it gets to that point, addiction, where we're doing things that are causing problems in our lives, but we keep doing them anyway. There gets to be the physiological dependence that comes with it, the tolerance and the withdrawal if we don't use. And so that can start to take over our lives. And then add to that the piece that I talk about, which is the wire together, fire together. No, I said it wrong. Fire together, wire together. As the brain cells fire in a pattern, they start wiring together to make that pattern more automatic. You don't have to think about it. So your brain just shoots you into avoiding that thing that you're afraid of, or attacking that thing that you're afraid of or hurt by or angry about, or go for that thing, that the addiction that you do, whether it's good or not, whether it's dangerous or not. And I refer to the emotions that move us away from bad things or toward good things as monsters if we keep doing what the emotion wants us to do. Because, and here's the key, the fire together, wire together means that if you don't do what the pattern is, it won't feel right. It'll trigger those emotions to go back to the pattern that feels right, the pattern that has worked for you. If you're about doing something that is self-protective and avoiding, then it'll go back to the avoidance. It'll try to get you to go back to the avoidance. That's what feels right. If it's about doing something that's an addiction, it will try to get you to do the thing you want to do for the reward, because that's what has felt right. And that becomes the monster. The idea that this came from, some of you have heard this, is from watching parents in a store with children. And the child wants something. And parents, if the parent says no, the child might throw a fit. And the throwing of the fit, if the parent gives in, they're giving in to monster behavior. So I extended this to monster emotions. If we give in when it's not a good thing to give into in the long run, to a behavioral or a chemical addiction, or to a fear, an avoidance of that fear, when we know intellectually this isn't good, but we give in anyway because of the immediacy, the reward or the protection, that's enabling our addiction to get worse, our problems to get worse, by giving into the monster feeling. And that's, if I was to make the distinction, now think of monster emotion. What are the initials? Me, M-E, me. Well, there's me, which I would call capital M, little e, is the me I want to be. But then I would make the distinction. Some people would say I should make me be the capital M, capital E, but I think of it as the monster who just expresses, just pushes to give in to the pattern, and that's the capital, and learning how the way the brain wires, the way the brain reacts, because this part of the brain, that gut part of the brain, can't think. It's all towards moving us towards something we want or away from something we're afraid of or is a threat. It can't think. The thinking brain is more of the adult brain. It's the one that can think long term. It's the one that is the parent to this brain. But this brain reacts first. It reacts without thinking. And can this brain get strong enough to think ahead? Is this the right thing? Would people I love be proud of me? How is this going to be in the long run? Will this hurt me? And how do you pull back, just like we try to teach kids, pull back from the emotions? Because here's the key. I'm jumping all over, but from a physiological standpoint, the thinking brain, this overriding brain, that's more inhibitory, thoughtful, looks at the long term, looks at what will mom or dad do, doesn't mature enough to really function, let's say, until the kid's about 8 or 9. And it doesn't function well until maybe into our 20s, maybe later. So but this brain, the want brain, the fear brain, it's functioning very early. And so parents often have this kind of thought in their head of, how many times have I told you? And I tell parents, look, you are the thinking brain for your child. You are the one who it needs to get them to stop, pull back from the emotion, the want or the fear, and sort through what's the right thing to do here, what will make the parent happy. Doing this with yourself, self-parenting, rather than the enabling of a problem to get worse by giving in to the monster. And real key, you heard this before probably, if you've heard any of the others, it isn't that kids are the monsters. In that case, it's the parents that become, in a sense, the monster by enabling, by giving in. And if we give in to our own wants or our own fears, then we're enabling the problem patterns to get worse. But it is hard. It's hard to stand up to the emotions that want what they want when they want them, whether it's to go for something that they want or to get away from something they're afraid of. How do you stand up to your own feelings? And I just encourage people, and I may have a video on this at some point, about parenting yourself, being a good parent to you. But at this point, I'm going to leave it where it is and stay with the enabling, the unintentional. Again, unintentional is a huge part. The intention is to feel better now. The unintentional training is giving into the monster, lets the problems grow, and lets the monster reaction grow to the point that it makes it very hard to change, especially because the wiring gets stronger. And so we have to rewire the brain by standing up to the monster and doing differently, even though there's so much uncertainty, there's so much fear, there's so much want that can try to make us feel so badly that we want to give in, enabling it to, worse yet. So think about ways that you give in to the patterns that cause problems, and are there ways to begin taming this monster? And I'll talk more about monster taming in some other videos. Thank you for your attention. Hope this makes sense, and hope they help.